Hello, everybody. Today is day 116, and we're reading Psalm 73, 77 through 78. I'm focusing largely upon 73, but I want you to find one little verse and it has two words, but God. And I want you to hang on to that because I was really encouraged by this one chapter, which really is reflected in the other two Psalms. But you will identify the psalmist addresses the issues that visit all of us, like emotions and the battles of the mind and the daily grind. And you will find his heartfelt, honest confessions here. My life is difficult, he says. He's crying out to God. He says, I felt as though I've almost stumbled, and I admit I've been anxious, and my mind. He deals with the inner turmoil that's going on in his life. Then it seems, he says, here's what he says, it seems the wicked, as he observes the life of the wicked, he says, it seems as though there's no sorrow, there seems no even fear or expectation of death. Their strength is firm, they don't have trouble, and it doesn't appear as though as others, they seem to be pretty trouble-free, they're proud, they're confident, they're violent, and yet they press on, and with no repercussions, it appears. They have an abundance in their life. They're more in their life possessions than you could ever wish for. They scoff, they speak wickedly, they talk against God. They make fun of him. They're convinced, in fact, that he doesn't exist, and yet they live a life of ease and plenty. And so he's just reflecting and contemplating on all of this. And he says, surely, looking at all of this, evaluating all of this, I've lived with a pure heart. I've really sought God. And yet it seems as though it's all in vain. What benefit is there to me of living this way? I've lived in innocence, but my life has been plagued with trouble. And he says, it's as if I'm chastened every morning, and it's painful. It's too painful for me to even consider until, and this is what I love, that until, he says, I went to the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their end. That is the end of the wicked, the end of those who give no account for God. Surely, and this was his revelation, we find this in the 73rd Psalm, their way is slippery. Destruction and desolation in a moment will strike their life, and they are consumed with terrors and nightmares. It's not obvious to us, but this is the inner workings of their lives. And then the psalmist says, then I realized I was foolish and I was ignorant, and I'm disturbed and grieved that I even had these thoughts. Have you ever been there before? That these thoughts that rattle around in our minds as we consider, is it my life compared to the life of those who don't serve God? And then he says this, nevertheless, I'm reminded I am continually with you, God. I'm reminded that you hold me by your mighty right hand. I'm reminded that you guide me with divine counsel. I'm reminded, and afterward, I'm received into glory. And he's talking about his ultimate end as one who's righteous and follows God, that one day I'm going to be in the very glory of God. So, whom have I but you, is what the psalmist says. Whom do I have but you, O God? There is none upon earth I desire but you. My flesh, my heart fail me, but God. That's where he gives that but God in there. And he says, he's the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Those for you who are far from you, who oppose you, they're going to perish. But it is good for me to draw close to you, O God. Never, this aspect of being near to the heart of God, I have put my trust in the Lord God, the psalmist says. I will declare all of your works. And as I read this today, I couldn't help but to think myself, all of us have challenges and difficulty. Jesus said, in the world, you're going to have trouble, but I've overcome the world. And I think that when you look at your life and my life, like the psalmist, there are days that we look and say, I see wicked people and individuals in high places of position and power, and they're wicked, and they're contrary to God, and they have no consideration for their eternal destiny. And we sometimes wonder, what is the benefit of what we are doing, the suffering, the struggle, but God. we realize, like the psalmist, that he does hold us by the hand. And we realize that one day he's going to receive me to glory. And we look at the end of the unrighteous and we realize that they're going to pay an ultimate price for their decision. But with you and I, but God, you and I have, as the psalmist so beautifully declares it, it's well worth it to live for God, for we will receive the reward of our surrender to him.